partially this video is all about financial crisis, and the other half's about Wealth Dynamics Academy, which is coming up in Singapore.
Right.
I understand it's the first time you're having this event, which will talk more about the 64 vectors of wealth. And give us more details. Are you going to cover what you just spoke about with them?
Right? Yeah. I mean, this is the thing about going behind the scenes. When we talk about building trust and how trust comes from promise, you could almost take, for example, accounts. In accounts, people know about balance sheets and profit and loss and cash flow, but when they're just thinking about the numbers, it's very easy to get put off about just looking at the numbers. When you think about it in terms of promises, everything changes, and every entrepreneur becomes a master at understanding that your balance sheet is simply your promises made. Bill Gates' balance sheet, Warren Buffett's balance sheet. It's the promises made and the promises then that are paid, which is your cash flow. Your promises delivered, which is your P&L. And every one of the different profiles does it in different ways. So for example, let's say I'm a mechanic. I might be creating a franchise. I can create a franchise just for my time, and that becomes a promise that people will have the promise of what I can do with that franchise is worth money. I'll pay the money and then I'll deliver it. You might have someone who's a deal maker who might say, I've got a deal which is going to be the promise delivered, but first of all, I'm going to have part of that promise paid. I'll get money up front, then I'll have money during the deal, then I have money after the deal, and the promises made, not me to others, but also then to each other, becomes part of the balance sheet of what we're going to create. When you start to think about it in this way, you realize if you don't know this, you don't know the gameplay to actually play the game. So one thing we're going to go through is that. It's how we actually work with our profile and then start knowing what are the promises we should be exchanging effectively with each other. That's effective giving. The second thing we're going to go through is how we connect with each other, which is the 64 vectors. So for example, what should a creator do if they're in the property market and it's in winter? Well, it might be in winter in America, but at the moment it's autumn in Singapore. It's summer, or at least the springtime, in places like Bali. It's summer in Thailand. So then it's a matter of how do I reposition myself? I'll give you two examples of where that's happening in real time today. One, in terms of repositioning, is if you were to look, for example, at Warren Buffett. I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago before he'd invested in General Electric and in Goldman Sachs, saying he's going to start investing in areas where he sees value, and it may not be in America. Now, he waited for those ones to be at the right value, but he was already investing before that. A bank called Nomura, or a finance house called Nomura in Japan, what they did was they actually bought Lehman Brothers in Europe, Lehman Brothers in Asia, $250 million. Where did they get the money? Well, on the same day they did that transaction, Warren Buffett bought from Nomura, a company for $1 billion in Japan. And he was investing in people because that was a people business and it wasn't a finance business. So he bought that, think that's what I'd like to do. And in the meantime, you can now use that money to go buy Lehman Brothers. So a lot of people don't know that cycle that goes on, but it's happening every day. 2 days ago, we had Steven Spielberg, where you think, well, Hollywood, surely less people will see movies. And what did he do? With David Geffen, who's a deal maker, they just did a deal with Reliance in India to basically, and this is, by the way, a company that, for anyone not familiar with it, is owned by Anil Ambani, who's the sixth richest man in the world. And they've basically done a $1.5 billion deal to take Bollywood to Hollywood, where basically Bollywood's like 3 times the size of Hollywood. So it's actually, again, changing location to say, well, if we can't get the money in America, we'll go to India. And then as a result of that, they now got that business and they're now taking that to Hollywood. Rupert Murdoch doing the same thing, same week, where he also said, right, Fox, we're going to go to Bollywood and we're going to take all the top Hollywood movies and convert them into Bollywood. And that's also happened this last week too. So there's these amazing things going on where people are thinking, right, if this is my profile and this is the way I exchange promises, where do I want to do this? And we're going to be talking a lot about that as well.